Hey, what's happening? Welcome to Studio Stories. My name is Tomi Martin. I'm a guitar player, session, touring, church, bar mitzvah, whatever you need it for. I do this as a living. Been doing it for a living for well over 30 years. Started early and still going. I don't know what to say about it, except that's my job. That's what I do. I work with a lot of people. I started out working, well, when I first moved to Atlanta, I moved here in the mid to late 80s. And I got here right at the perfect time when Atlanta was just about, I think the Olympics were starting and LaFace was just moving here and it was just starting to bubble as the music hub that it became. And I did a tour. I got called to an open casting for a tour for Pebbles. And I got the tour. And at the time, she was married to L.A. Reid. And after the tour was over, we got along great. You know, she gave me a good leg up and said, "You're good. I'm going to tell my husband about you." And she went and told L.A. And then maybe about 3 weeks to a month later, my phone rang. L.A. Reid said, "I need you to do a session on a song." And I went in to Silent Sound with Daryl and KO and all them, and I did it. It was actually funny thing. It was an old Deal song that I already knew, so that made it easy because I was a Deal fan. And I played that for Allison Williams, and they were like, "Wow, man, you're really good. We're gonna tell Dallas." And then it just kept going and going and going. Next thing you know, I was working for everybody. Then as I started working on records, the people whose records I would work on, they would call me to do their tours. And I started touring. Didn't really want to tour, but I wanted to travel. I wanted to see stuff. So I started touring with artists like Madonna and TLC and started doing Tony Braxton. And then later on, I started working with Rico Wade and started doing Outkast, Goody Mob, you know, all the real Southern hip hop stuff. Went on tour with Khalees. I say Bieber, that one kid. Just touring and working, man. That's what I was doing. So that's pretty much Tomi Martin's story. Well, then, you know, I started out at my dad's church a long time when I was like 4 and a half playing guitar. And my uncle taught me to play, my Uncle George, you know. He was the rhythm guitar player with Wes Montgomery when he was younger. And he said one day, Wes told him, "I'm going to LA to be famous, man. Come go with me." And my uncle said, "No, I'm going to stay here and be a preacher." And he was a preacher till he passed. So I got that from him. The downs are moving to a city and expecting to break and be famous within the first 3 months. That's a lie. It's not going to happen like that. I moved here with with a band, actually, from Louisville, Kentucky. And we all lived together. We did the whole thing. We lived together. After about 5, 6 months, we started hating each other and things wasn't taking off. You know, good friend Mitch Faulkner moved us all here. And I went through a period of just working, man, doing stuff. You know, I had to survive. I worked at Merry-Go-Round. Y'all know about that. I worked at Merry-Go-Round in South DeKalb Mall for a while. I worked at Seven Onda when all the shelves were wooden and, you know, everybody was pretty much a hippie. Lived in Little 5 Points when everybody was a hippie or artist or singer or a street person or, you know, a punk rocker, just everything you think of. And went through a period where, you know, like anything, stuff was getting harder and harder to meet ends. Relationships were getting not really that great. And you just kind of like, when I left home, my mother told me I'd be back. She said, "Don't worry about him, he'll be back. He's like the prodigal sons." We'll talk about that phrase later. And I was determined not to come back. She said, "Well, make sure you got a plan B, baby, just in case." I was like, "Nope, because if I have a plan B, I'll fall back. My plan A is gonna work." And it got to the point to where it was almost, the plan A was about to give up on me. And I had called my mom and she said, "Well, just come home, start over." And right before I got ready to come home, the week I was getting ready to leave to go home, somebody called and told me, you need to go to this audition. And I went to the audition for Pebbles, and that took off like that. Some of my highs, wow, I don't know where to start. There's a lot of highs, a lot of lows and a lot of highs. My highest high was working with, well, at the time I was working with Madonna and being able to go to a party in Donatella Versace's house, you know, and hanging out around this big round table. And it was me, the rest of the band, like Michael Bearden, Omar Hakeem, Victor Bailey, Michael Stipe was there, the Spice Girls were there, Donatella was there, what's his name, George Michael was there. And it was just this huge jacket. I thought it was a warehouse, but it was the Versace, it was their home. That's one of the highs, hanging out with those kind of people and wondering how I got there. A little old boy from Louisville, Kentucky. You know, I had to get up one time. I got up from the table. We were getting ready to eat, and I went in the bathroom. I said, "Where's your bathroom?" They let me go use the bathroom. I had to go in there and catch my breath because I was like, "Okay, how did you get here? What is really going on?" Then I went back out. It was cool. Doing that, writing with people is always a high. You know, being able to play songs with people like Donnell Jones and TLC and working with artists that I'm still getting what we call mailbox money from. You know, a lot of songs that I played on. Biggest high was really, oddly enough, touring with my own band. I got my own band, and one year when I was working at 7 Under, my manager, Michael Laurent, said, I know the Indigo Girls, and they're gonna do this thing called Jesus Christ Superstar, and I know you're in the band, so everybody's just picking a song to submit, but nobody would pick the title track. They picked everything but the title track. So my band, what we call Stereo Popsicle. No, we were Social Insanity. And we did JC Superstar, and it made it on the record, and we toured with them for like 4 years after that. That was a real high because it was my band. It's my music and doing what I wanted to do. And shoot, what's another high? Having Paul Jackson Jr. know who I was, my idol. When I met him at the Grammys, and I walked up to him and told him, I said, I ain't trying to make you feel old, bro, but I've been listening to you ever since I was a kid. You know, like you are the real. He's like, oh no, man, I know who you are. I know your work. You good. Let's take a picture. That freaked me out. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that at all. I was like, I've got work. I didn't even know I had work, you know. A good story, oh man. How can I do this without indicting? What's a good story? A good story is, I got so many, because I'm really happy about what I do. And there's like a ton of good stories, you know, from going to New York to rehearse with Madonna for Oprah Winfrey and being able to play on the Oprah Winfrey show and doing sound check. We're sitting there and checking everything, and I realized I'm sitting right here and Madonna's right there and Oprah's right there. That's kind of intimidating, you know. That, and then leaving there and going back to my hotel and having her say, nah, man, you hanging out with me. What are you doing? I was like, nah, I'm good, man. I know you got to do what you got to do. She said, no, you know, I'm going to send a car. We're going to a comedy club. We went to a comedy club in Queens and hung out, and then came back to my hotel after the night was over. And I was like, just drop me off at this bodega because I can walk from here to, it was in Times Square. She's like, well, what are you going to the bodega for? I was like, I'm just going to get some Twizzlers and stuff. Well, I like Twizzlers, so she walks in the bodega with me. And everybody's looking at her like, they're like, nah, can't be. And then I leave like, okay, you know, it's cool. You can go on with the car. I sat on the curb because it's New York. I love New York. She sat on the curb with me. And we sat there and we ate Twizzlers for a while. And people were walking by going, that shit looks just like, nah, it can't be, you know. That was fun. So of course, when somebody asks you, it's something you can't remember a ton of stuff. Going to a vineyard in Paris. no, in Italy, hanging out, and I don't drink, but being in a vineyard with Khalees and seeing all this land and all this, just, I love Europe, and just the way they lived and the way it was like that was fun, to be included with that. I know it's gonna sound corny, but you gotta be yourself. And when you're yourself, people are either gonna like you or they're not gonna like you. But if you're personable, if you're honest, if you're not pretentious, and you gotta be good at what you do. You gotta be good at what you do, whatever it is, from singing to writing to playing. Be good at what you do, but if people don't like you, you won't work. You have to be somebody people want to be around. You can't be a jerk. You can't be the greatest guitar player in the world, but you're a jerk because nobody wants to be around you. They're not going to hire you. So just kind of like, be personable and understand socializing. I know this sounds weird to say in 2020, but socializing and years ago, Dallas said something to me and it stuck in my head, and I didn't understand what he said meant at first. He said, man, this whole business is about who you go to bed with, like that. And I was like, what is he saying? But what he was talking about is who you have relationships with. This whole business is about who you have relationships with and how you treat those relationships. So don't burn a bridge. If you do burn a bridge, build another one. But it's, and my biggest advice, never change your phone number. I've had the same phone number for over God knows how long, but everybody can find me. If you keep changing the number, people lose you. So everybody I've ever worked with in this industry still has my phone. Thank you for tuning in to Studio Stories. Keep watching. There's going to be a whole lot more people way cooler than me. It's going to be on here. I understand Andre 3000 is coming, and there's a slight chance Jesus will be here. But no, I'm just kidding. And no, thanks. This is Studio Stories, man. Everybody keep chasing your dream. It's not a dream if you catch it.